Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Battle Stadium singles video here on iStarly TV. Today's video I'm featuring the 5 most underrated legendary Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's Regulation G format. So Regulation G started a few days ago at this point, about a week ago at this point, and it's been doing pretty well. I think I've played a few games on the ladder on ranked, and it's pretty interesting to see what people are bringing. I think the meta is still fairly new. It looks like there are some top contenders for really strong legendary Pokemon, unsurprisingly, but it really feels like you can use almost anything. There are maybe a couple of legendary Pokemon where I'm like, you probably shouldn't use that because there's something that's probably better than that, but aside from that, maybe 2 or 3, everything does seem like it has some amount of viability and it's worth it to kind of explore. So with that being said, let's kind of get to this. It's not exactly a top 5 because I'm not ranking these in any particular order, but these are 5 legendary Pokemon that I think will be really good in the meta, but are underrated, which means that people are either not really trying these or not really looking at these, or that, you know, they look weak, but they actually have some merit to being used. Let's start with the first Pokemon on our list. This is Lunala, and this is specifically Lunala, not the Dawnwings Necrozma, which I think Dawnwings could have its own usage as well. That Pokemon probably has merits that this one doesn't, but I like looking at Lunala here for a few reasons. Now, Lunala's stats are pretty good. It's got really high special attack, pretty high special defense. Its speed is kind of in a weird place where it's faster than like certain things, but it's slower than most of the strong legends like, you know, Koraidon, Zacian, Calyrex. Those are all a lot faster, so it's in a weird kind of spot. But I do think that Lunala has a few things going for it. It has a really high HP stat as well, so obviously with this Pokemon you're going to want to run like a tanky Lunala set, probably with Calm Mind, and its ability Shadow Shield is also really cool. If it's at full health, damage taken is halved. So it takes half damage from attacks, which is when it's at full health. So it's basically multi-scale, right? Which is one of the reasons that Dragonite was so good in, or has been so good in all these previous formats, because of multi-scale. And with this ability, which is basically multi-scale, and the ability to change your type with Terra, with terrestrializing, you can set it up to where, you know, Psychic and Ghost is a pretty awful defensive typing. It's really weak to a lot of common things, and it's 4 times weak to Ghost, it's 4 times weak to Dark, which is not a good place to be in. But if you can kind of bait out a Ghost or Dark type move from the enemy and terrestrialize into something that's good, like Fairy or Normal or something like that, you can really turn things around. And it does have its own healing move in the form of Moonlight, which is pretty good. Obviously, that's basically like a variant of Recover. And its signature move, Moongeist Beam, ignores the abilities of enemy Pokemon, which also can be really strong. If you're up against a Dragonite or an opposing Lunala, you can do massive damage to them while ignoring their, you know, multi-scale or Shadow Shield ability. And also, you know, this Pokemon probably won't be super common, but Mimikyu, for example, if you're up against a Mimikyu, you can just Moongeist Beam and one-hit KO it, and their disguise will not work. So we've seen abilities like this or moves like this in the past that ignore abilities, and I think they're pretty strong. So I would try, you know, a Calm Mind set, like I said, with Moongeist Beam. I think Moongeist Beam is a given. You probably always want to have that move on your set. And then from there, Moonblast is really good. And you definitely want Moonlight as well, and I think that offers pretty good coverage. You could go Terra Blast depending on what Terra type you have. You could also go more offensive, but the funny thing is, I don't know if you ever want to go offensive Lunala, because if you're looking for a strong offensive Psychic and Ghost type Pokemon, guess what? There is already one. Calyrex is already very good, so the point here with these Pokemon, like I said, these are Pokemon that are not like super commonly used or not really being looked at or talked about, is to use them for their advantages that they have over other legendary Pokemon. And if you just want a fast, really powerful Ghost and Psychic type, yeah, Calyrex is your guy or girl. The next Pokemon I wanted to look at is Origin Form Palkia, which is pretty strong. It's got a really good combination of stats and also a really good typing. Water and Dragon is a solid typing that is really hard to hit super effectively. It has just a couple of weaknesses, and it takes neutral damage from most things and resists a lot of common things as well. Origin form Palkia also has a higher speed stat than regular Palkia, which puts it in line with some good Pokemon in the meta, although sadly it is still outsped by the most common, fast, powerful threats. But, basically when I look at Origin form Palkia, I kind of envision using it as a Pokemon that's really good against like non-legendary Pokemon, and then this Pokemon is probably not the best against a lot of the legendary Pokemon. I guess if you're going up against Ho-Oh, for example, you might have a good matchup there, but against most of the other legendary Pokemon, I guess you might also have an okay matchup against Kyogre perhaps, but against most other legendary Pokemon, you're gonna be outclassed and they're gonna be better than you. They're gonna probably get the upper hand. So just kind of knowing your matchups and, knowing when to send in your Palkia and what moves to use and stuff like that is what's going to help you with this Pokemon. But again, I do think it has a unique enough typing, and it is really strong. Its signature move, Spatial Rend, is also 100%, it's 95% accurate, but it's 100 base power, and it's a special Dragon type move with a high critical hit ratio. So it's basically kind of like a better Draco Meteor. So if you want a strong special attacking Dragon type, this could be the one for you. And like I said, defensively it's solid. With Terastallizing, you can cover those weaknesses really well. The biggest downside to Origin form Palkia, another big upside, is that personally I think it looks really, really cool as well. Like, this is a really awesome design from Legends Arceus, and it would be cool to use it in competitive battling. The biggest downside I think about it is actually that its form is only available with an item, the Lustrous Globe. Now, the Lustrous Globe is easy to obtain. I have a video showing how to get all of these form changing items in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. You just go to the auction in the Porto Marinata city. So it's not hard to get the item, but it's unfortunate that in order to use this form, you need to have a specific item. So you can't use your own items. You can't use choice specs. You can't use choice scarf, stuff like that. So in that way, it is possible that regular form Palkia might just be better. But again, I think this one has a lot going for it. This one is faster than regular Palkia, so this might be a reason to use it. After that, we have Kyurem Black. This is the fusion of Kyurem and Zekrom, of course. And I think a big reason that I like Kyurem Black is because it is really strong. It actually has one of the highest, if not, I'm trying to think, but I think this might be the highest attack stat of any of the legendary Pokemon. I could be wrong, but either way, it has a very, very high attack stat, which means it's going to hit very, very hard. It also learns a lot of good moves. It's got Stab Dragon, which is nice, Stab Ice, which is not too bad, with Icicle Spear. It does have Icicle Spear, which you can also use with the loaded dice item to make sure you always hit 5 times. That could be a really strong strategy. And it also has some good electric type coverage in the move Fusion Bolt, which is a 100 base power electric type move with no downside. So of course the combination of electric and ice, the bolt beam combo, has always been very, very good because very few things resist it. And having a Pokemon with such a high attack stat, the ability Terravolt, which also ignores abilities of other Pokemon, we talked about how good that was a few Pokemon ago. This thing looks like it has a lot of merit. You could go bulky. It learns Dragon Tail as well. I actually did some testing games in-game, and I faced one of these, and it was a really close battle. I almost lost, but they went Terra Electric. I had my Zacian in, which is really funny because I used Behemoth Blade, which would be super effective, but then they went Terra Electric, which resisted it, and then they went for Fusion Bolt, which did massive damage because they were now Terra Electric, right? So yeah, I think that that's something that you could look at with Kyurem Black. It also has a high HP stat and decent defenses to boot. Its speed is also in that, it's kind of in that weird category that a lot of these legends are in, where they're like around base 90 to base 100 speed, which is not fantastic. So that's something to keep in mind. This Pokemon is outsped by all of those fast threats we've talked about. It's also outsped by things like Urshifu, which will likely be pretty common. But if you're just using this thing for just pure damage, it could be a very big threat to go up against for your enemies. And the typing, again, offensively is really, really solid. So I like this Pokemon a lot. The design is sick, and it's got a high attack stat, so I think it's worth trying. The next Pokemon on my list is actually Zamazenta, which is, you know, the unfortunate little brother of Zacian. Of course, Zacian has always gotten the spotlight in these competitive formats because Zacian is really, really good. Zacian was nerfed between Gen 8 and 9, but it's still really strong. And Zamazenta is a Pokemon that like no one would ever use. However, I do think Zamazenta has merit because of its ability, Dauntless Shield, which when you are holding the Rusted Shield item will always boost your defense by 1 stage every time, or when you enter the battle. Now here's the thing, Zacian was nerfed, which means that, you know, by effect, basically Zamazenta was also nerfed, so this only triggers once per battle. So if you send in your Zamazenta, you get the defense boost, but then if you have to switch it out, when you switch it back in later, you do not get the defense boost anymore. Still, Zamazenta has massive defensive stats. It has a good HP stat. Still, it also has a pretty high attack stat as well, and it has good speed. So, you know, it is still outsped by Fluttermane and Koraidon and Calyrex, but it does outspeed some important threats like Ogerpon and stuff like that. So my point with Zamazenta is I don't think you want to use it like a physical attacker. I mean, basically you do, but with the moves Iron Defense and Body Press, I think you could get a lot of mileage from Zamazenta. We've seen how strong that combination of moves is in previous formats with certain Pokemon. Boosting your defense means you get to survive hits really easily, and then Body Press gets even higher or even stronger as you do that. And of course, you get a free defense boost when you send Zamazenta in. So Zamazenta could be a good counter to basically any physical attacker. So if you're expecting a lot of Koraidon, maybe you could go for a Terra type that's decent against, like even Terra Fighting is good. Terra Fighting would boost the power of your Body Presses, and you would not take super effective damage from any of Koraidon's moves. So if you like send in your Zamazenta early and scare something out, and you get the defense boost, then you go for Iron Defense, you're at +3 defense, and when you Terrasilize, you don't take super effective damage from any of Koraidon's moves, so Koraidon will have a difficult time taking you down because you're at +3 defense, and you're also doing massive damage back because of your massive defense stat, and you're using Body Press. And it also has pretty decent coverage as well. It has Behemoth Blade as well, just like, or it's called Behemoth Bash, but it's basically the same thing. It's a 100 base power, 100% accurate steel type move, a physical move, which is nice because that's pretty good with the coverage. And then it's got some fighting coverage, some dark coverage, some psychic fairy coverage. You know, it has a lot of options for coverage. If you don't want to go Terra Fighting, you could even go like Terra, I don't know, Water or Terra Flying or something, and that also gives you the option to go with Terra Blast. But you know, I do think Zamazenta looks like it has a lot going for it because of Iron Defense and Body Press. The biggest downside to this is that because Zamazenta must hold the Rusted Shield item, unfortunately it doesn't have access to really any good recovery. So that's the biggest downside. You know, other Pokemon that have succeeded with Iron Defense Body Press in the past, like Corviknight, for example, or even Garganacl, they have access to moves that heal them, and even items that can heal them, where Zamazenta does not. So if you're going to use Zamazenta, which I still think is a good Pokemon, you definitely want to have your team support it really well. Make sure you can go into it at the end when all of the threats are gotten rid of, and there's just nothing but like not that strong physical attackers left on the enemy's team, so that you can just boost your defense and just knock them out. Because once you get that Dauntless Shield boost and then get like 1 Iron Defense, you're probably killing most everything that doesn't resist or isn't immune to fighting. So yeah, I like Zamazenta here, and I think it's worth a try, especially since, once again, you know, Zacian has always gotten the spotlight, so it'd be nice to see Zamazenta shine. And finally, the other Pokemon I want to talk about in this list is Rayquaza. Rayquaza, I'm going to say Rayquaza. Rayquaza is another Pokemon, and maybe it feels weird to call Rayquaza underrated because it is very strong, but obviously, when you compare it to some of the other threats in this meta, it maybe doesn't look quite as strong. However, Rayquaza has a couple of unique features that not a lot of these legends have. Namely, it has its own signature move, which is called Dragon Ascent. I mean, all of them have signature moves, but it has a good signature move. It's basically a flying type close combat, which is really, really strong. flying is actually a really, really good offensive typing, and if you think about it, a lot of the most common threats take a massive amount of damage from Dragon Ascent. Calyrex, Koraidon, Fluttermane, Chien-Pao, Ogerpon, all of those Pokemon, you know, either are weak to it or take neutral damage from it, which means they take a lot of damage from it because it's a very strong move. And Rayquaza has base 150 attack as well as base 150 special attack. The downside is Rayquaza is not super fast, though its defenses are okay. I mean, for a legend, they're like kind of not great, but you know, 105 HP, 90 defense, 90 special defense is pretty solid, pretty well-rounded. Its move pool is also pretty deep. Aside from Dragon Ascent, it has Extreme Speed, which is another move that we've seen do really, really well in Battle Stadium singles, basically in Gen 9 in general, because of the Pokemon Dragonite, who's been really good with Extreme Speed in the past with Terra Normal. And of course, you can do that with Rayquaza as well. You can go Terra Normal with Extreme Speed, you could go Choice Band, you could go Swords Dance, Dragon Dance. There's a lot of ways to boost your attack. And if you're going Terra Normal, of course, you're going to do massive damage with that Extreme Speed, and you're going to have priority over everything. The problem with that is two of the best Pokemon in the meta right now are Ghosts, Fluttermane and Calyrex, but most everything else is going to take massive damage from that. And if you can cover those two Pokemon with your other moves, you'll be in a good spot. Earthquake is a solid move as well. It also has access to fire moves. As I mentioned as well, it has a high special attack stat as well, so you can also go mixed Rayquaza. You could go like Extreme Speed and like Outrage or something, or Dragon Ascent, and then you could go with a couple of special moves to kind of keep the opponent guessing. Like you go Overheat, which does massive damage. If the enemy has like a really good physical defense Pokemon, maybe you could get a KO from that. If they're not expecting you to have a massive special attack stat as well. Additionally, its ability is really good. Airlock, I think this shuts down Koraidon, which is pretty huge, or rather, it shuts down Koraidon's ability. So Koraidon, I believe, will not get the attack boost in the sun, which, if that's the case, that is massive, because that's one of the reasons Koraidon's so good right now. And if you can run a Pokemon that's like really, really good in general, but also can kind of make the best legendary in the game currently not as strong, that's a good place to be. And again, you threaten them with the Dragon Ascent. You can choose your Terra type. You know, obviously Koraidon's a dragon and you're weak to dragon, but if you can choose the right Terra type, you can kind of go toe-to-toe with Koraidon and come out of that exchange on top. So yeah, Rayquaza looks great as well, and really all of these Pokemon are fantastic. So yeah, there's plenty more legendary Pokemon that I haven't talked about. I mean, there's just so many new ones that are added to this format, and it's fun to speculate. So let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed, if there are any legendary Pokemon that you think deserve a time in the spotlight because they look really good, or not a lot of people are expecting them. There are a few that I wanted to talk about, but again, I just wanted to do like a top 5 kind of video rather than, you know, spending 2 hours talking about like 20 legends that are not used currently. But either way, these are some fun ones. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoy trying some of these out. Let me know in the comments if you want a specific moveset. I can throw you one. I can kind of come up with them. I have some in mind. I just didn't want to go through like specific movesets for all of these. I just kind of wanted to talk about them more generally, but this was very fun. So please leave a like, please subscribe. And again, in the comments, let me know all your thoughts. I'm interested in hearing, and I hope you have a good day.